Today we are covering a Spike Lee movie called Jungle Fever. Flipper lives a happy family life in Harlem with his wife Drew and their daughter Ming. He drops Ming off at school before heading to work, which is at an architectural firm. His secretary Terry has been replaced by an Italian named Angela Tucci, or Angie. Leslie and Jerry, the higher-ups, explain that Angela is highly recommended. However, Flipper confronts them, saying that he specifically requested an African-American secretary. But Leslie says it's discriminatory to not like someone just because of their skin color, adding that they hire the best people for the job, which is, in this case, Angela Tucci. Flipper is the only person of color in the office, but he drops the argument and accepts his boss's decision. He confides in his best friend Cyrus, who happens to live in the same building with his wife, Vera. Vera is Drew's friend too. Apparently, Vera is the breadwinner and Cyrus wants her to have a child. However, Cyrus is dusty and needs to go back to school. Meanwhile, over at the Tucci's residence, Angie's father and her two brothers, Charlie and Jimmy, are waiting for her to cook dinner. Ever since her mother passed away, Angie has been cooking and working for the family.
I like mommy's cooking better.
Meanwhile, these grown men don't work or cook. Useless Italian mama's boys. Even though there are arguments around the house, they are all protective of Angie and watch closely whenever Paulie Carbone comes over. Paulie and Angie have been dating for a very long time, and Paulie is a decent guy. Flipper's parents are the Reverend and his wife, Lucinda. They live a peaceful life at their old age. However, more than often, their eldest son, Gator, walks in asking for money. He's a druggie but swears he's clean. Reverend doesn't agree to giving him money, but Lucinda can't say no to her son. How many dusty men can fit in one movie? At work, Angie and Flipper have been spending a lot of time together. Work demands a lot, and so they stay up late to finish everything. Eventually, they get too close and start talking about their lives. Angie says she's been dating Paulie since high school, but something is missing, probably a 12-inch. After many nights, the tension gets too high. Even though Flipper admits he's happily married, and Angie is fully aware of this, nothing stops them from crossing the line. They eventually bang on the table while the rest of the world sleeps. Why is Wesley Snipes always a trifling hoe? The next day, even Ming notices the drastic change in her father. He's quiet and distant. Paulie runs a shop that is frequented by his Italian friends. He also has a regular customer, Oren, who gives him an application to college. He can't stop looking at her even when she leaves. Back at the office, Flipper finally asks Leslie and Jerry to make him a partner at the firm. They have promised this to him before, and Flipper is sure his work has massively contributed to the company's success. But the bosses say the timing is not right, so Flipper finally decides to resign from his job. Later that night, he tells his best friend Cyrus not only about the resignation, but also about his affair with his secretary. Cyrus isn't bothered until Flipper reveals that she's white. Flipper says he's always been curious about white women, and so he has finally given in and tapped Flat Pancake. Cyrus can't believe it and insists Flipper and Angie both have jungle fever. Gator happens to see Flipper, so he asks him for money and introduces his new girl, Viv.
I like getting high.
And Flipper doesn't want anything to do with him. The two crackheads argue, and I wasn't expecting these two famous stars to be side characters. Meanwhile, Angie also reveals the affair to her friends. The cheating doesn't bother them, but the fact that Angie did it with a black guy is what made them confused. They warn Angie to be careful. There's a story about an Italian woman named Gina who brought a black guy into the neighborhood, and the black man was killed.
Personally, I think it's pretty disgusting.
And you're an ugly hoe. Regardless of their peers not supporting them, Angie and Flipper continue to see each other at a restaurant with Queef Latifah being their waitress. She hates to see a black man with a white woman. Even people at the carnival find it odd that the two of them are on a date. Flipper says his wife is great and that he loves her. Angie knows not to expect that Flipper will leave Drew for her. However, even Flipper doesn't know why he continues to cheat on his wife. Drew finds out about the affair eventually. One night, Flipper just returns home with Drew, throwing all of his things out the window. Now all of their neighbors know that Flipper has cheated on his wife with a white girl. Now homeless, Flipper spends the night over at his parents' house. The Reverend quickly confronts Flipper about the real reason behind the fight, but Flipper doesn't admit to cheating. When Drew confides in her friends about their marital problem, one of them suggests they start dating white men. He thinks there are no good black men to date, and the good ones are dating multiple women at the same time. They also criticize that successful black men usually have white women in their arms, but Drew doesn't want to date a white man. She is sure that there are good black men out there, only they don't earn that much. One of them says she wants one.
With a dick down to his knees to keep me happy for days.
But above all, Drew points out that white women are always staring at their men, and now she has lost her husband because of one. It turns out Cyrus has told his wife, Vera, about Flipper's affair, and Vera dropped the bomb on Drew, and that is how Drew found out. The next day, Flipper visits Drew at work to patch things up with her, but Drew has had enough with his blade being impale women. She reminds Flipper about the bullying she suffered at school because of her skin color, and how it hurts her that Flipper eventually replaced her with a white woman. Flipper says he doesn't love Angie. Still, Drew insists that she's done with him. Meanwhile, Angie breaks up with Polly. She says she needs to go far away. Polly cries after the breakup, and his father, Lou, criticizes him. He hits Polly for hiding in the bathroom. Lou says that marriage in modern times is way different than back in his day. He says even when he and his wife fought, she remained a dutiful wife, so he loved her dearly. When Angie comes home, her father beats her up. He's found out that she slept with a black man and is furious. He says he prefers Angie to be with a murderer or a PDF file. Jimmy and Charlie try to help their sister, but their father proceeds to beat her with the belt. When they finally get him to stop, he kicks Angie out of the house. Absolutely insane to be that racist. Good luck trying to cook for yourself. Not long after, their Italian community hears about it. After Oren visits Polly's store, the men there, except for Polly, all say they want to sleep with her, but they'd never let anyone know. Trust me, she don't want you, bro. Vinny, Denise's boyfriend, says it has to stop at one point. Vinny even brags about hitting Denise just to keep her in line. Patty, Vishay, Frankie, and Sonny share the sentiment about disliking black people. But Polly doesn't care about skin color and continues to be nice to everyone. Now with no place to go, Angie and Flipper get an apartment together. It doesn't take long for Gator to find their address. He wants some money, but he doesn't fail to notice that his brother is dating a white woman. Though he's pleased that Angie looks great, he's disappointed that she doesn't have any money. Even though he continues with the affair, Flipper still visits his kid. One day they encounter a washed-up Halle Berry.
I suck your dick good for $5, baby.
Flipper is furious. He warns Ming to never ever take drugs. Doing that to your child after that encounter is diabolical. Then he finally introduces Angie to his parents. The Reverend begins his sermon before they even begin eating. He points out that white women have always been curious about the black man and goes on a tirade about how white people have been diluting their blackness for decades. He can't blame Angela, but he's disappointed that his son is having an affair, even though he is married and has a daughter.
I don't eat with whoremongers.
But you knew she was coming.
Flipper knew Angie was coming last night. After that, Flipper and Angie leave. Outside on the street, they start horsing around. Flipper even pins Angie down on the hood of his car as they pretend to be boxing. Someone in the neighborhood is watching and immediately reports it to the police. When the cops arrive, they pull Flipper aside and put a gun to his head. They say someone has made a report about a black man assaulting a white woman. They ask Angie if Flipper was trying to sexually assault her. Angie tries to defend Flipper and says they are lovers. So Flipper denies this right away and says they are only friends. After confirming that no one is in danger, the cops leave. As for Polly, soon enough he starts to develop feelings for Oren. He confesses to her and waits for her answer. His friends find out about it right away. But the conversation soon becomes a confrontation between Frankie and Vinny. Both are defending their families to each other. Polly has to get in the middle just to stop them. Then Vinny mentions Angie and how she's now living in Harlem. Evidently, this gets to Polly. Over at the Reverend's house, Flipper's mother has another problem about Gator. Gator visits, asking to borrow the colored TV. But he's not allowed to take it anywhere. So he gets angry, picks it up, and walks out. Flipper tells his mother to let Flipper go because there's no saving him. But their mother refuses to believe that Gator is a crackhead. She even asks Flipper to take the TV back before the Reverend returns home. So Flipper heads out to look for his brother. He asks around and eventually finds out that he's at the place they call Taj Mahal, or the grand place for crackheads in the area. As soon as Flipper walks in, he starts to smell the drugs. Everywhere he looks, people are getting high. When he finds Gator, he confronts him and asks for the TV. But Gator says he's currently smoking the TV. He used the money to buy drugs so he can get high with Viv. Flipper reaches his limit and says they're finally cutting Gator off. He returns to the apartment pissed. Angie starts asking about their plans for the future and about having kids. Flipper says he's married and doesn't plan on having other kids, especially half-white kids. He says mixed kids turn out to be mixed up. Angie says both Drew and Ming have white blood in them. But to Flipper, they act black, so they are black. Then he calls Angie's family racist. That night, Angie is gone. She meets with Polly, but Polly is no longer interested in her Mayo Oz. He's going out on a date with Oren. Lou is furious. He doesn't want Polly to date a black woman, but Polly wants to live his life and is devastated that he has to do everything for his father. As soon as he's out of the building, his friends are there to harass and confront him, especially now they know he's going out on a date. Polly finally snaps and fights back, causing a brawl between them, but he still goes over to Oren's house after. When Angie and Flipper meet at the apartment again, Flipper finally tells her the truth. He says they should end their relationship because they don't love each other anyway. Flipper admits he's always been curious about pastrami meat, and Angie only dated him despite her family. After the fallout, Angie returns home to her father. Gator waits until the Reverend leaves before showing up at the house again. He's asking his mother for money, but she doesn't have any more to give. He gets angry and confronts her. He begins to be aggressive, and his mother keeps convincing him to leave before the Reverend arrives. Gator doesn't listen, and soon enough the Reverend returns home. He gets angry with Gator and scolds him, but Gator doesn't take him seriously and even dances for them. Then, the Reverend shoots his own son dead. His wife holds Gator's body as he takes his last breath. As for Flipper, he still visits Drew just to sleep with her. She's still digmatized but needs some time to think if they should get back together. Flipper loves his daughter so much but admits he can't return home just yet. While he's walking out, he encounters a young woman offering him bleep favors in exchange for money. He screams "no" and holds on to her. This was a wild one, y'all, but had great discussions, especially when Drew was talking to her girlfriends. Not my favorite Spike Lee film, but I like that he doesn't shy away from difficult topics in the black community. What did y'all think of this one? And did you guys watch it way back then?
If you like this video, make sure you subscribe and turn on notifications. We got lots more of foolishness on this channel that'll have you hollering. And if you like to watch more, just click here or here.